Okay, can we begin?
Yes, Maharaj.
Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chaksurunilitanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayavacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Welcome everyone to our Bhakti Sastri. We're studying the Bhagavad Gita, and this evening we're going on to chapter number 9. Okay, so we'll see what the lesson plans entail. We're going to hear about these terms: confidential, more confidential, and most confidential knowledge. That's with reference to Bhagavad Gita 9:1, the first verse of the 9th chapter. So there's nothing very difficult there. And then we're also going to hear about the main philosophical points of the Rajavidya verse, which is the second verse of the 9th chapter. And that will be included in that. We will hear the example of Narada in relation to Pradyaksh Avagamam. Pradyaksh Avagamam Dhamyam Susukam Kartamavyayam, 9.2. So 9.2, there's 2 points here in 9.2. One is in relation to Pradyaksh Avagamam, and the other is the main philosophical points. And then we will also hear, in relation to verses 4 up to 10, we'll hear about Krishna's relationship with the material world with reference to Sanskrit terms and analogies given in the Bhagavad Gita. So it's some important points there in that section. The 4th verse up to the 10th verse of the 9th chapter. So we want to cover these things tonight. We will only cover part of the 9th chapter, and we'll have the 9th chapter again tomorrow night. Okay, so the first three verses of the chapter praise Krishna's, they praise pure devotion to Lord Krishna. That's the point. The first verse, for example, speaks about being non-envious. So this is one of the qualifications of the pure devotee, that they don't have envy. There's no envy. And they have total faith in Lord Krishna. They don't have any doubts about Krishna. So this is the first 3 verses of the 9th chapter. We'll hear about the qualifications for pure devotion. And then the other part, we'll hear about Krishna's inconceivable relationship with the material world. His Achincha Shakti, inconceivable, how Krishna can relate to this material world. At the same time, he's aloof from it, he's not involved in it. And then the chapter goes on, we'll hear about fools, how they neglect bhakti. But those who are devotees don't. We'll hear about people think Krishna.
Recording stopped.
People think Krishna's an ordinary person, and then...
Recording in progress.
They think Krishna's an ordinary person, and so the results of that is that whatever they do, they're never successful. And then after that, then Krishna speaks about the Mahatmas, the divine, the Mahatmas, and what happens to them. Of course, they don't neglect bhakti. They're fully engaged in bhakti. So that's brought out. And then 15 to 25, we'll hear about different types of indirect worship of Lord Krishna. Some people, there are different categories of indirect worship. Sometimes people worship the universal form, some people may worship the demigods, and some people may worship the impersonal feature of Krishna. All different categories of indirect worship. And then the chapter finishes with the glories of devotional service. And that's a very important part. Text 26 up to 34, to the end of the chapter. The glories of devotional service. And we'll be looking at that tomorrow night. But tonight, we're going to hear about the first half of the chapter. So the connection between this chapter and the previous chapter. In the 7th and 8th chapter, the 8th chapter is actually just a continuation of the 7th. It's very apparent. Remember, at the end of the 7th chapter, Krishna had used those terms, Adi Daivam, Adi Yagyam, Adi Atmam, and so Arjuna asked, what is the meaning? So Krishna explained. So that was the connection between the 7th and 8th chapter. So Krishna had explained also in that 8th chapter that he's easily obtained by pure devotion. Right? Krishna said, I'm easily attained because of their constant engagement in my devotional service. I'm easily attained. So now, in this chapter 9, Krishna is going to praise pure devotional service in the first 3 verses of chapter 9, where Krishna himself is going to praise those who are the pure devotees. And we'll hear what are their qualities. Right, here's the first verse. Would someone like to read for us, please?
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Idam tu te guhyatamam pravakshyami anusuyave jnanam vijnana sahitam yagyatva mokshashe suvat. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you the most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved of all of the miseries of the material existence. 9.1. Hare Krishna.
All right, so Lord Krishna has described Arjuna's special qualification. First of all, he's never envious of Lord Krishna. Now, of course, that's not a small thing. That's a very important, very major quality which Arjuna has. Just imagine when you're working with somebody who's very wealthy or very rich, or very handsome, very good looking, very intelligent. Won't we we'll think, oh, he's just so amazing. And there will be some envy there. And we'll be thinking, oh, I wish I was like that. I wish I could be like him. So that's the envy. Anyway, because Arjuna is not envious of Krishna, Krishna said, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge. And really, most confidential knowledge, right? There's confidential knowledge, there's more confidential knowledge, and this is the most confidential knowledge. Idam tute guyatamam. Guyatamam meaning most confidential, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence. Krishna is going to impart the confidential knowledge and realization. So jnanam and vijnanam. Knowledge and realization, Prabhupada described at least one time, he said just like you may know what is the chemical composition of a solution, but do you know how to make it? Just like knowledge, you may know water is a mixture of hydrogen and oxygen. 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 atom of oxygen. So water is, we say H2O. So we may have that knowledge, but vijnanam means that you can actually make water. You know how to produce water. You have to get the hydrogen and oxygen, and in the right conditions they can react together to produce water. So jnanam is knowing something, and vijnanam is actually understanding how to use it, how to make proper use of it. So this is very confidential knowledge. And the benefit of this knowledge is you get relief from all material miseries. Gyatva mokshase shubhat. A lot of suffering in the material world. Material existence means misery. But if we take shelter of Lord Krishna, we'll be relieved of all of these miseries. Yeah? We'll go ahead. Jnanam. Jnanam, that by which something is known. Since the Lord is known by bhakti, bhakti is called jnana. Bhakti is called jnana, right? Direct bhakti in the form of singing the Lord's glories and other devotional activities. And so bhakti is also jnanam. And vijnanam is realization of Krishna. And then we have anasuyave, non-envious, devoid of seeing fault in my qualities. People who are envious, they will deride things. They won't see a good in things. They will just see faults. So anasuyave means non-envious. They don't see faults in anything which is Krishna's. So it's an important quality. In the Goswami Astikam, Srinivasacharya has written, describing the Goswamis of Vrindavan, that they were Dira Dira Jana Priyo Priyakaro Nirmatsuru Pujito. They were loved both by the gentle and the envious. They were loved by everyone, even people that were not devotees, they were not really pious, but somehow the Goswamis could just enter their hearts and they would appreciate these Goswamis who were living there in Vrindavan and who were, they're living like beggars, living under a different tree and begging, doing madhukari. But the Brijbasi people, they saw the beauty of these Goswamis. They just loved them. They thought they were so nice, they were so gentle, and they were so learned, and they were so wonderful devotees. So anasuyave, they didn't see any fault in any of Krishna's qualities. All right, Prabhupada explains about confidential, more confidential, and most confidential. Someone can read.
The very beginning of Bhagavad Gita, the first chapter, is more or less an introduction to the rest of the book. And in the second and third chapters, the spiritual knowledge described is called confidential. Topics discussed in the 7th and 8th chapters are specifically related to devotional service, because they bring enlightenment in Krishna consciousness. They are called more confidential. But the matters which are described in the 9th chapter deal with unalloyed pure devotion. Therefore, this is called a most confidential. Bhagavad Gita 9.1 Bhagavad.
Thank you, Prabhu. Now later on, in the 18th chapter, we'll see again these terms, confidential, more confidential, and most confidential. But in the 18th chapter, the confidential is related to the knowledge of Brahman, and the more confidential is the knowledge of Paramatma, and the most confidential is knowledge of Bhagavan. So in this way, in different places in the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada uses these things to explain things in different ways. All right, is that clear? Is it understood here? Here you can see in this section, 2nd and 3rd chapters, describing the difference between the body and soul. That's confidential knowledge. And then chapters 7 and 8, talking about Krishna's energy and reincarnation and so on, that was more confidential. But this chapter 9, this is the most confidential, because it's going to explain about the very intimate relationship between Lord Krishna and his devotees. And you'll see when we come to the end of the 9th chapter, what is the most confidential knowledge. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Rajavidya. Okay, here's the 2nd verse, the Rajavidya sloka. Someone read.
Rajavidya. Okay. Rajavidya Rajaguyam Pavitram Midam Uttamam Pratyakshāvagam Dharmam Susukham Kartum Avyayam. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It's the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting and it is joyfully performed.
Thank you, Manaji, yes. All right, so we should note these different terms here. Not very difficult. Rajavidya, the king of knowledge. We have Prabhupada's book, King of Knowledge, Rajavidya. But this knowledge is not only Rajavidya, it's also Rajaguyam. It's confidential. It's secret of all secrets. Knowledge is actually for everyone, but not everyone wants education. And this particular knowledge, which is given in the Bhagavad Gita, is very special knowledge. So even someone they may like education, they may not like to get this knowledge, but the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita, this is Rajaguyam, confidential. Pavitram, it is pure. And idam uttamam, it's the highest. And pratyakshavagamam dhamyam, it gives direct perception of the self by realization. We'll discuss this in a little while. What does this mean? Pratyaksha. Pratyaksha, right? We talk about pratyaksha, that's the 5 senses. We get knowledge from the senses, from the pratyaksha. When you studied Ishopanishad, it was mentioned how different kinds of evidence is there. There's pratyaksha, anuman, and shabda. So pratyaksha is sense perception. So pratyaksha avagamam, dharmyam, direct perception of the self. And by realization. It is the perfection of religion, dharmyam. It is susukam, joyfully performed. And Prabhupada talks about that. Huh?
You have class?
Yeah.
Okay. After me.
Yeah. So Prabhupada talks about this verse. There are so many departments of knowledge all over the world and many huge universities. But there is, unfortunately, no university or educational institution where the science of the spirit soul is instructed. Yet the soul is the most important part of the body. Without the presence of the soul, the body has no value. Still, people are placing great stress on the bodily necessities of life, not caring for the vital soul. So this is Prabhupada's beginning of this purport on the second verse of the 9th chapter. He's talking about knowledge, Raja Vidya. This is the king of knowledge. This knowledge is actually meant for kings. And people who are kings, it means they should be kings of their senses, kings of their mind and senses. But then they can make proper use of this knowledge. Or we could say this knowledge is all meant for kings. It's meant for the special people, those people who are in a good situation in life, that they should understand this knowledge. Just like in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it was described how this knowledge was given to the Rajarshis, the saintly kings. And the knowledge was passed down through the Rajarshis. Because the saintly kings, they can impress this knowledge on all the citizens who are under their control. So this is how we understand this knowledge. It's meant for these people, for the leaders of the society, and the leaders of society are meant to distribute this knowledge to others. So in this way it's Raja Vidya, it's the Vidya of the kings. Then Prabhupada talks about how the impersonalists, they have different conceptions about this. He says sometimes people are under the impression that the soul is different from the body, and that when the body is finished or one is liberated from the body, the soul remains in a void and becomes impersonal. But actually, that is not the fact. And so people have these speculations about what happens at the time of death. When you leave the body, maybe when you're liberated, you leave the body, then what happens to the soul? Some people are thinking that the soul goes into the void, or becomes one with the Brahman. But Prabhupada said, no way, it's not like that. What happens to the soul? So those who are pure souls, they will go back to Godhead. And those who are not pure souls will take another body. Different ways. We have to understand, with the help of the commentaries of the Acharyas, these statements. Prabhupada explains more on the concept of the soul. Someone can read?
How can the soul, which is so active within this body, be inactive after being liberated from the body? It is always active. If it is eternal, then it is eternally active. And its activities in the spiritual kingdom are the most confidential part of the spiritual knowledge. These activities of the spirit soul are therefore indicated here as constituting the king of all knowledge, the most confidential part of all knowledge. It's from Purport, Bhagavad Gita 9.2.
Okay. So the soul is eternally active. And activities in the spiritual world, that is the most confidential part of knowledge, spiritual knowledge. Spiritual knowledge itself is confidential, and the most confidential part of spiritual knowledge is to know about the activities of the spirit soul in the kingdom of God. So Prabhupada is giving this example that the soul, how it was active so much in the body, so after you're going to be liberated from the body, no more activity, all the activity is going to be stopped. It's not logical. If it was active in the body, why is it not active when it leaves the body? We'll take another body. Okay, here's a quote from Prabhupada. Raja Vidya, by bhakti alone I am known. Pavitam idam uttamam, because it destroys all sins, including the subtle body. Pavitram idam uttamam, right? Pavitram, pure, the highest, it's the purest thing, it's the highest thing. So this is the power of devotional service, that it can destroy all the sins, including the subtle body. In order to go back to Godhead, we have to be without sin. What to speak of go back to Godhead? In order to engage in devotional service, we have to become sinless. We've already studied the 7th chapter, so you'll remember verse 28, right, Mataji? Right? We'll ask Rukmini Mataji, what is that verse 7:28? Do you remember that verse? 7:28, where it said you have to be without sin. 7th chapter.
Tesham tva antagatam papam jnanam punyam karmanam. Maharaj, this one. I'm reading.
Yeah, I know you're reading.
Yes, Maharaj.
You're not very familiar with this verse, I think. Yesham tvantagatam papam jananam punya karmanam. Right? Remember? We discussed about punya karmana. Remember we had the discussion on punya karma? Do you remember that?
Yes, Maharaj.
Yes?
Yes, Maharaj.
Right? What kind of punya karma do we need to do devotional service?
Maharaj, punya karma for devotees.
Right, yeah, we have to do pious activities for devotees, right? By serving the devotees, by doing... But if we get the blessings from the devotees, that will give us a qualification for bhakti. So, devotional service itself can destroy sins. And because we have a lot of karma from our past before we became devotees, so that's why we have subtle body. We have a subtle body, we have a mind, and in the mind there's so many impressions there from our past sinful activities. But that can all be removed by devotional service. This is the power of bhakti, that it destroys all the different kinds of sins. Have you studied the nectar of devotion yet?
Yes, Maharaj.
Oh, so then you know about the different phases, different stages of sinful reactions. Right?
Yes, Maharaj. Yes,
Right?
Maharaj.
What are they?
Papam, bijam, kutam, prarabdha, aprarabdha.
Yes, right. Papam. There's prarabdha and aparabdha. And kuta and bija, right? These things. So, devotional service, if we do pure devotional service, it destroys all the different levels of sinful reactions. Even the prarabdha karma, even the sins which we're suffering now in our body, they can be removed by devotional service.
Even the tendency also,
Yes, even the tendency to perform sinful activities in the future can be removed by bhakti. Okay, good. So bhakti can destroy all the sins. We're having a storm here in Mayapur. Can you hear the thunder?
Yes, Maharaj.
Yeah, a lot of thunder. All right, how many people do we have here tonight for the class?
17, Maharaj.
17, all right, so we can make some pairs. We can have 8 pairs. Well, there'll be one group of 3 and the rest will be pairs. And we want you want you to explain these different terms. Pratyak Shavagamam, Dharmyam, Susukam, Avyayam. They're all in the same verse, 9.2, but it's a big purport there. So you have to go through the purport and find the section where these words are described. And then we'll hear from you. We want you to explain these different terms.
Should I open our rooms, Maharaj?
Yes, please.
Devotees, please accept the request to join the breakout room. Prerna Mataji, Jia Kumari Mataji, can you please accept the request to join the breakout room?
Mataji, I joined, but there was no one. I was alone, so I just left.
Okay, somebody is in your room already, so if you can just join back. Gaurav Prabhu is
Okay,
joining.
Mataji.
Friday, or we can separate again twice a week for student for state and so.
Rukmini Mataji, can you join your room? Vidyavati Mataji, I have moved you to another room.
Should I bring them back, Maharaj?
Yes, I think so, yes.
Okay.
Okay, everyone's back?
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay, so?
Yeah.
So the first term is pratyakshavagaman. Who would like to tell us about this term? And explain the meaning, tell us about it.
Yes, Maharaj, may I?
Please.
Maharaj, Pratyaksha Varumam, as we read the second verse of this chapter, so in the meanings, Pratyaksha Varumam, first of all, is something like by direct experience, understood. So it is written here in the purport that by associating with the sages, Narad bought the taste for hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord, and he developed a great desire for the devotional service. Therefore, as described in the Vedanta Sutra, if one is engaged simply in the acts of devotional service, everything is revealed to him automatically and he can understand. This is called Pratyaksha, directly perceived. So this is something like that. Pratyaksha Bhagwan.
Could you give us an example? Have you had any kind of experience of this yourself?
Yes, Maharaj. Yes, definitely. Like association of the devotees is something like Pratyaksha Varumam. On daily basis, like we go to the temple, attend Mangala Aartis, and we attend Bhagavatam class. This is all that these all that are some examples of direct association, and this is Pratyaksha Varumam.
How did it manifest?
It manifests automatically inside our heart.
What do you actually perceive?
Rajvidya, confidential knowledge.
Okay.
Different kind, transcendental knowledge, in other words.
Okay. Yeah. Good. Yes.
One more thing Prabhupada here mentions, like we can, the results can be perceived when we have practical experience by chanting the holy name of the Lord. One gets some transcendental pleasure and becomes purified with material contamination. This is a practical example Prabhupada mentions. And another thing Prabhupada mentions, like when one is involved in the missionary activities and broadcasts the message of devotional activities, then also automatically a person feels spiritual progress. So these two things, Pratyaksha Bhagavan.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Very good, yes. Anyone else like to add on to this? Any other realization? Yes?
Maharaj, we can see that in the lives of Srila Prabhupada disciples, those were initially hippies, but when Prabhupada went and Prabhupada started like giving lectures on Bhagavad Gita, serving them prasad and chanting. So we can see after the practical demonstration, life of so many people got changed. And that is like we can directly perceive them through our senses that those who were hippies, now they became great saints and started wearing dhoti, kurta and saris, and their life got transformed. They were elevated to the level of greater than Brahmanas.
Okay, yes. In a sense, they were, they were not happy as, they were trying to be hippies, but they were not, they were more seekers of, they were looking for something, you see. That was the actual mood at that time, that young people were looking for something. They were out there and they were feeling frustration at the direction of the world. They thought, where are we heading in our life? Particularly in the USA, because you know, the American, they were at war with Vietnam, and the young men were all being drafted and sent to Vietnam to fight, and people didn't like it. They didn't want, just like, you know, you've got this thing with Russia and Ukraine. Many of the Russians, they didn't also want to fight Ukraine. They thought these Ukrainian people there are our brothers, you know, but somehow, due to politics, they were forced into the war. And so similarly in the West at that time, young people were also being drafted and sent to Vietnam. And because of, so people thought, what's the point of this kind of existence? They wanted to get away from it. But coming to Krishna consciousness, it was something they could directly perceive. The bliss, the spiritual pleasure, the satisfaction of self-realization which came about. And it came about also so easily for them, without a great endeavor. Unlike other paths, you know, the Jnana Yogis, they struggle. They have to go through so much to make advancement. But Krishna consciousness, it's so easy for people. They just simply have to chant Hare Krishna and dance. And people could, the devotees, they could perceive their transformation. When they shaved their head, you know, they were coming to Prabhupada and they were coming with long hair, and they'd shave their head, cut all their hair off, and give up their grubby clothes and get out of their jeans and put on a dhoti and mark their bodies with tilak and kunti mala. So it made it so much easier for them to perceive the level of self-realization. It was something they could conceive of it directly. So pratyakshavagamam, they were actually able to perceive it directly. It wasn't just something that, oh, you know, it's within you, but they could actually directly feel it. They were so happy and so joyful and satisfied, and they could leave everything and come to Prabhupada and completely give themselves up to Prabhupada to follow his instructions. So the example is there, of course, Narada Muni, how when he was a young boy serving, helping his mother and serving the sages, and he got the blessings from these sages. He got the blessings from them, and as a result of their blessings, he went on to experience also self-realization. All right, anything else you want to add to Pratyakshavagamam?
Yes, Maharaj, I would like to add here that by serving Vaishnavas community every time and most of the time, we can realize this knowledge, absolute knowledge practically.
Yes, definitely. It's not just something we're speaking about just theoretically. It's actually realized knowledge. It's something, as you say, we can directly perceive it. So it's pratyakshavagamam. We can feel, we can perceive the transformation in coming to Krishna consciousness. Okay, then what about dharmyam? Who would like to explain this for us? Yes, Prabhu? Yes, Aradhya Prabhu. Aradhya Gadarha.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So here in regard to dharmyam, which is the principle of religion, And the Prabhupada, he tells about the story of Narada Muni, that how when he came in association of devotees, and he could easily attain the path of religion because he was readily serving the Vaishnavas, eating remnants from their plates. Like we also hear, there are three things which are very powerful: Bhakta Padaduli, Bhakta Pada, Bhakta Vashesh, and Bhakta Padajal. So he was directly getting all this thing in association of devotees. And although Narad Muni never went to any school of spiritual master, or he wasn't educated in the basic principles, still he was able to acquire the highest results of Vedic study. So this means that this form of this devotional service, to directly rendering devotional service to Krishna, is the highest path of religion. That just by practicing devotional service in association of devotees, even if you are not going to any, as such Vedic Gurukul, as we see in that case of Narad Muni, he got the highest perfection in the same lifetime of him. Basically, that as we hear in the verse, Nikhila api avastasu jivan muktasa uchyate. So in that same life, he got liberated.
Oh, okay. Yes. Anyone else like to add on to Dharmyam?
Maharaj, same, I just want to add one point, that the perfection of religion is the attainment of devotional services. This is what Narad Muni has done. As Prabhuji has also said, the perfection of religion is to attainment of devotional service. And once anybody who performs discharge the pure devotional service, knowingly, unknowingly, will be benefited. And this is the dharma. This is the path of religion. By this, everything will get.
Yes.
Also, just one thing I missed, Maharaj. In the last line of the purport, exactly the last line, Krishna says that devotional service is the purest form of religion. So there, Prabhupada says that this is the purest form of religion. So in the last line, Prabhupada is confirming that this devotional service is the highest religion that exists.
Can you help me understand what is pure religion, what is not pure religion?
Impure religion, like we hear that Lord Krishna says in the end of the Bhagavad Gita, that Sardharman Paritajya. So people are generally caught up in the religion of that I'm a Brahmana, I'm a Kshatriya, I'm a Vaishya, I'm a Shudra. So all these religion are related to the body in which one is in. But ultimately we all are part and parcel of Krishna. So that religion which is rendered, that religion which is in relation to our eternal constitutional position of being part and parcel of Krishna, Jiva Sarupa Hoy Nitya Krishna Das, that is the purest religion. And all such other religions, religion basis of one's material bodily designations, that are impure form of religions. As we also hear in the Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, that pure devotional service is devoid of all material designations. I forgot the verse. What was the exact verse?
Sarvapari vinirmukta.
Yeah. So that is what is purest form of religion is.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Anybody else like to add to Dharmyam? And yes, Prabhu, yes? Priya Satyabhama?
Maharaj, I was just saying, we were talking about pure religion. So Prabhupada says that pure religion is where you learn to love God. Anything other than that is not pure religion. So when you learn to love God, you actually realize your. I'm sorry about the noise in the background, Maharaj. My son is playing.
Okay.
So much Prabhupada says when you learn. Sorry, Maharaj. Sorry.
Go ahead.
So, Maharaj, when you learn to love God, that's religion. So, Dharma, when Prabhupada says the purest form of religion, that's learning to love God through devotional service.
That's a very nice point. Thank you very much. I like that. Very nice. Yes, certainly. And in Srimad Bhagavatam, we hear about Savaipumsam Parodharmo, the supreme occupation for all humanity is loving service to the Lord. And it should be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. So devotional service should be without material desires. There's kaitava dharma, cheating religion. So this dharma which is mentioned here in 2nd verse of 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, this is describing pure dharma, meant to satisfy the Lord, to please the Lord. As Maharaji said, we should love Krishna. Real religion is to develop love for Krishna. And love means service. We show our love by service. Yes? Any other points? Okay, what about Susukam?
Maharaji, can I try Susukam?
Yes, please.
So, Susukam means happiness, that devotional service gives you happiness in whatever state you are. And the purport explains it so well, gives several examples of how we can get happiness, that simply by honoring prasadam, simply by hearing the chanting of Hare Krishna mantra, simply by even eating tulsi leaves, Santa Kumara, he became a pure devotee. And then Lord Krishna talks, he says in Gita that Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam. So he's happy with whatever you offer to him. So overall, the happiness that we could get in devotional service is what is explained as Susukham. And God is happy with whatever you offer him. That brings so much of satisfaction and happiness. And I can talk about my example, that now, ever since I have joined ISKCON, it's been, many years, a few years, things have changed. I become very happy when I'm chanting, even on the train, when I go to office. Earlier, I used to listen to different music, but now either I chant, listen to chanting, or I do japas in the train. And it gives a very different happiness and satisfaction to me before I start my work or start my day. And the good thing is that even if you're very, very poor or rich, it doesn't matter. A devotional service, if you do it with purity in your heart, God accepts it. And that is Susukham that I have understood from purport.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, there's the happiness. There's material happiness, which is just happiness of the body. And then there's the happiness of impersonal liberation. But there's also the happiness of pure devotional service. And this is the vastly superior happiness. The happiness which is derived from rendering pure devotional service to the Lord. It's the highest stage of happiness.
Yes, yes. And Maharaji, one more example I want to give, that earlier I never cooked so well. But now if there are programs in the temple or people come to our home, I can actually cook for 50 or 100 people, which is with so much of happiness I have, that it gives a very different kind of happiness. When you actually serve devotees with your own hands, it's a very, very great feeling.
Jai, you're having nice realizations there, enjoying serving the devotees. It's very wonderful.
Yeah.
Certainly.
I live in the UK, Maharaj, and here, the temple is very far off. So generally we try and see if people can come home for programs. So like the temple is very far off from our home.
I see. Now you're in the UK, yeah?
Yes.
It's just a small country. It's not very big.
Yeah, you're right. I agree with you, but it's just that it is 2 hours drive to Bhakti Vedanta Manor. So we try to go once, sometimes, but they do come home. So they do programs at our home, which is very nice, the devotees of Bhakti Vedanta Manor.
Okay. 2 hours is very short time for some people.
Sorry.
In bigger countries, Anyway,
yes.
Everything's relative.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Yeah.
I can understand your feeling, but you're lucky that devotees come to your home, and it's very nice of you that you accommodate them. Your home is open to devotees.
Yes, always.
That's also very nice, very liberal. All right, and then the last term, avyayam. Someone like to take it up?
Yes, Maharaj, may I?
Yes, please.
Abhyaya means everlasting. It is said that this devotional service is eternally existing. It is not that, like Mayavadi claims, that it ends after we leave our body. It is actually devotional service continues even after liberation. When the devotee goes to the spiritual planet in the kingdom of God, he is also engaged there in the serving Supreme Lord. Hence, it is ever existing, everlasting. It goes birth after birth. It does not end with our body.
No. Okay, so devotional service is eternal. And the pleasure of devotional service is eternal, right? The pleasure, just like impersonalists, the Mayavadis, they're serving Krishna. They may be even chanting Hare Krishna and worshipping the deity, or reading Bhagavad Gita, but they're thinking ultimately they'll give that up. You know, their motive is that this will be the means to their perfection, and their perfection is when they give everything up. And they don't chant, and they don't worship the deity, and they don't read Gita anymore. Instead, they become the oneness with the Brahman. But for the devotees, the devotional service is eternal. We're serving Krishna here, we practice serving Krishna here, and we'll go on serving Krishna there, in the spiritual world. It's not that we become Krishna and give up everything, but we'll continue to chant. In the spiritual world, we'll be chanting and dancing, and we'll be discussing Krishna's qualities and Krishna's teachings. That's the nature of the spiritual world. So everything is avyayam, devotional service, everlasting. And everlasting pleasure, the pleasure is increasing more and more. Material world activities, the more you do them, the pleasure decreases, and you become bored and you want to give them up. Oh, I want something different to do. But devotional service is not like that. Devotional service, the more we do it, the more we want to do it. We want to be more and more engaged in Krishna's service. We take more and more pleasure in chanting. The more we chant, the more we want to chant. The more we serve Krishna, the more we want to serve Krishna. That's the nature of devotional service. That it gives us that kind of taste. We want more. So here's some quotes, Prabhupada talking about Pratyaksha-vagamam. Someone can read?
Yes, Maharaj. It is said that the execution of devotional service is so perfect that one can perceive the results directly. This direct result is actually perceived, and we have practical experience that any person who is chanting the holy names of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, in the course of chanting without offenses, feels some transcendental pleasure and very quickly becomes purified of all material contamination. This is actually seen. 9.2 purport.
Yes, right. Yes.
If you are hungry and are given very nice, nutritious, palatable food, you don't have to take any advice from others. You will understand yourself. Yes, I am now feeling strong. I am now feeling energetic. This is called Pratyaksha Varma. Similarly, if you take to Krishna consciousness, that is the process, then you will feel automatically satisfied. BG 9.1, New Vrindavan 75.
So, automatically satisfied. You'll feel automatically satisfied. Prabhupada said, now feeling energetic. That is Krishna consciousness. Just like eating food, you feel energetic. after taking food, having a good meal, you've got energy, you're ready to work. So Krishna consciousness is the same process. You feel automatically satisfied. And here's Narada Muni, Dharmyam. Someone read?
Dharmyam, the path of religion. This process is so potent that even without performing the religious process regularly, one can be raised to the highest perfection. How is this possible? Acharyavan Purusho Veda. One who is in association with great acharyas, even if he is not educated or has never studied the Vedas, can become familiar with all the knowledge necessary for realization. Example, Narad Muni, by association, achieved the highest goal of all religion, that is devotional service.
Okay.
Susukham Kartum. Simply by tasting the tulsi leaves offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, great sages like Sanat Kumar became great devotee. Easy to complete acts like hearing, offering tulsi leaf and water to Lord. Avyayam exists in liberation.
Okay, so then going on to the next verse. This is 9.3. So next verse, we're still on this first item about the qualities of bhakta, of devotion, the great qualities which are there within devotees. So this third verse is also describing the same thing. Yes, someone can read?
Those who are not, Ashradhana Purusha Dharmayasha Parantapa Aprapya Mam Nivartante Mrityu Samsaravatmani. Those who are not faithful in this devotional service cannot attain me, O conqueror of enemies. Therefore, they return to the path of birth and death in this material world.
All right.
9.3.
So in 9.1 we heard about being non-envious. Arjuna was not envious. And now in the third verse we're hearing about people who are not faithful. So these kind of things that, is telling us what to avoid in devotional service. We want to keep strong faith, and we want to also avoid envy, giving up envy. Ashraddha, those who are faithless. Now if we have no faith, how can we get faith? Where are you going to get faith? You have to associate with people who have faith. It's very important to get the right association. And if we don't have faith, then we return to the path of birth and death in this material world. All right, we're going to go on to the next section of this 9th chapter, the opulence of the Lord. Text 4 up to text 10. Achintya Beda Beda Tattva. All right, so this is an important part for us. Matstani sarva bhutani nachaham teshavastita nacha matstani bhutani pashyame yogamashwaram. So this is, first of all, 9.4. Krishna is saying, 9.4, all beings are in me. But then he said, I am not dependent on them. They're in me, but Krishna said he doesn't depend on them. And then he says, everything that is created does not rest on me. Understand my extraordinary yoga, the maintainer of all living entities. Krishna himself is the maintainer of all living entities. All right, we will hear more about this. Prabhupada explains. Someone can read?
One may think of doing nothing, but there are so many impediments, and sometimes it is not possible to do so as we like. But when Krishna wants to do something, simply by his willing, everything is performed so perfectly, then one cannot imagine how it is being done. The Lord explains this fact. Although he is a maintainer and sustainer of the entire material manifestation, he does not touch this material manifestation. Simply by his supreme will, everything is created, everything is sustained, and everything is maintained, and everything is annihilated. It's from Purport Bhagavad Gita 9.5. Example, a king heads a government. 9.4.
Yes, actually, Mataji, you made a little mistake when you read that first line. You said, we may think of doing nothing, but it's we may think of doing...
sorry. Sorry.
We may think of doing something, but there are so many impediments. Right? So just in case people listen to the recording, they may get it wrong. All right? So simply by Krishna's willing, everything is done so perfectly. So simply by his will, it's all done. Krishna doesn't have to himself go and do it, but simply by his will. This is his inconceivable potency. He doesn't touch the material manifestation. Everything is just done by his will. You could say the power of the mind. So everything is sustained, everything, and ultimately everything is annihilated. Under his direction, it's all going on by his will. Yes? Someone can read?
9.8.
Yes, Mata, you can carry on.
9.6 to 8 speaks about action of Krishna's will. 9.6, the wind is great. It is still situated within the sky. The wind is not beyond the sky. Similarly, all the wonderful cosmic manifestations are existing by the supreme will of God, and all of them are subordinate to the supreme will.
Yes, thank you, Mataji. All right, let's have a look at this. 9.6, right? This is an important point. Krishna is giving an analogy here to help us to understand how he can be doing everything, but at the same time aloof from it. So Krishna gives the example. He says, understand that as the mighty wind blowing everywhere always rests in the sky, all created beings rest in me. So definitely it's the fact that all the wind is blowing and it's always in the sky, it can't go beyond the sky. And so the same way, all of us created beings, we are all resting in Krishna. We're under the control of Krishna, the will of Krishna. We're all subordinate to that will, the will of Krishna. This is Krishna's supremacy, supreme position, right? So it's very amazing how Krishna does this. Because Krishna had said earlier, number 5, he said, everything that is created does not rest in me. He said, it doesn't rest in me. But here actually he said, it's under the will of Krishna, but it's not directly resting in Krishna. And then Krishna describes it as his mystic opulence, right? His yogam aishwaram. Although I'm the maintainer of all living entities, and although I am everywhere, I am not a part of this cosmic manifestation. Because myself is the very source of creation. So the cosmic manifestation, that is all coming from Krishna. So you can't expect Krishna to be a part of the cosmic manifestation. He's the creator. So number 6 gives the example about the wind, how it always rests in the sky. And then the next verse, text number 7, goes on, it says, at the end of the millennium, all material manifestations enter into my nature. And at the beginning of another millennium, by my potency, I create them again. So it's all going on under Krishna's direction. At the end of the millennium, it enters into Krishna, and then after some time again begins another millennium. Krishna creates again. It's all going on continually. And then text number 8, this whole cosmic order is under me. Under my will, it is automatically manifested again and again. And under my will, it is annihilated at the end. So these 3 verses, number 6 up to number 8, describing Krishna's will, how everything is going on under Krishna's will, automatically manifested again and again. And under my will, it is annihilated at the end. So this is Krishna's very confidential dealing, how he's working with the material energy. It's all going on under his will. Let's have a look. Krishna being doer and neutral. Isn't it a contradiction that the Lord is both the doer, but at the same time he's neutral? Is this a contradiction? So we point out that certainly he is the doer, as indicated in verses 6, 7 and 8. Krishna is the doer. How was he doing it? He said, by my will it was all done. Everything was done under his will. Then what about number 9? What happens to in text number 9? What does Krishna say? Someone can read text number 9?
Nachamam tani karmani nirbandhananti dhananjaya udasinavad asinam asaktam teshu karmeshu. O Dhananjaya, all this work cannot bind me. I am ever detached from all these material activities, seated as though neutral.
Yes. Go ahead, Maharaji, go ahead, read.
This neutrality is mentioned here with the word udasinvat. Although he has control over every minute detail of material activities, he is sitting as if neutral. The example can be given of a high court judge sitting on his bench. By his order, so many things are happening. Someone is being hanged, someone is being put into jail, someone is awarded a huge amount of wealth, but still he is neutral. He has nothing to do with all that gain and loss. Similarly, the Lord is always neutral, although he has his hands in every sphere of activity. In the Vedanta Sutra 2.1.34, it is stated, Vaishamya Nair Grahanye na. He is not situated in the dualities of this material world. He is transcendental of these dualities, nor is he attached to the creation and annihilation of this material world. The living entities take their different forms in the various species of life according to their past deeds, and the Lord does not interfere with them. It's from Bhagavad Gita, purport 9.9.
No. So, this is describing the neutrality, the neutral position of Lord Krishna. He doesn't interfere with the living entities. We are all getting the results of our past activities, our past deeds, we could say karma. So someone's enjoying, someone's suffering, we're all struggling in the material world. So Lord Krishna is the controller, but at the same time he's neutral. He doesn't interfere, he's overseeing. And he gives every individual their independence. Yes? Someone else can read?
Hare Krishna. Maya dakshina prakriti suryate sacharacharam hetunanena kaunteya jagat vipari vartate. This material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction. O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non-moving beings under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. 9.10.
All right. So material nature is under Krishna's direction. Sometimes we say personification of the material nature would be Mother Durga. And she moves like a shadow under the control of the Supreme Lord. And this was realized also by Srila Vyasadeva in his mature realization. After getting instruction from Narada Muni, then he saw the Lord with the material energy. And the material energy was under the full control of the Lord. And under the control of the Lord, everything is produced, all moving and non-moving beings, and the creation, the manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. So everything is going on under the will of the Supreme. Another example is given here, this time in the purport. Someone read?
It is like
Yes, Manaji, go ahead, Manaji.
It is like fragrance causes agitation by closeness. This example is given in the Smriti. When there is a fragrant flower before someone, the fragrance is touched by the smelling power of the person. Yet the smelling and the flower are detached from one another. There is a similar connection between the material world and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, he has nothing to do with this material world, but he creates by his glance and ordains. In summary, material nature without the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot do anything. Yet the Supreme Personality is detached from all living activities. 9.10 purport. Text 9, analogy of a judge punishing and rewarding different persons.
Thank you. Yes. So describe the Lord has nothing to do with this material world, but he creates simply by his glance. Just by his glance, and he ordains everything. The material nature cannot do anything without the superintendence of the Lord. But at the same time, the Lord is detached from all material activities. So here's a different example. This is an analogy coming from our Acharya, Srila Baladeva Vidyabhushana. And his example is, he gives the example about in the absence of the authority of the king on his throne, his ministers do not have power to carry out actions. If the king, without the king being on his throne, the ministers have no right to just simply decide what's going to happen in the country. They're powerless without the presence of the Lord, without the presence of the king. The king has to be there. You know, if the king dies, if he's not, or if the king becomes totally incapacitated, Then the ministers are also deep, they have no more power. The king has to be there. That's the point. The physical presence of the king is important in order to carry out their different actions. Baladeva Vijayabhusan gives that example.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes?
Maharaj, can you please explain a small example of that flower and smell which came 2 slides before?
Yes.
Please.
Yes?
Yes, Maharaj, can you please explain this, that how to understand exactly?
Well, just like flowers, you know, you're walking by someone's garden and they may have a nice garden with beautiful roses in the garden, and you're walking by there, you can smell the fragrance, the flowers, the fragrance of the roses will be, it may be jasmine. Jasmine is very fragrant. You walk past the jasmine bush, you know, you can smell the fragrance of the jasmine flowers. So each of these different flowers, they have their own particular fragrance. And we don't have to touch the flower in order to smell the fragrance of the flower. That's the point. We don't require to contact the flower. The aroma of the flower is coming, it's pervading the flower. You don't have to do anything to the flower in order to smell the aroma of the flower. You just have to go near the flower and you can smell the aroma. So in a similar manner, Lord Krishna is ruling the material world. He doesn't actually touch anything. It's all happening just simply by his will.
Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Yeah, Prabhupada said, he has nothing to do with this material world, but he creates. How does he create? By glance. And he ordains. He gives his orders. He doesn't actually touch anything, but he just by his glance. So this way Krishna is detached from all material activities. So that's the point, that he's not attached. We heard before, remember in the 7th chapter, this material world was the separated energy of Lord Krishna, right? So we're seeing this again here in the 9th chapter, how the material energy is separated from Krishna, detached from him. And how Krishna is, his neutral position is given there, the example of the judge. The judge punishes someone and he rewards others. And the people, the man who gets punished, he may complain. They say, hey, you rewarded the other person, why are you punishing me? But the judge says, because you're a robber and a thief. And the other man did some good, but he just got injured, so he's getting compensation. You're getting punished for your nonsense. So according to the activities, you get reactions. The judge is neutral. He doesn't have feeling, he's not partial to one person or another.
Thank you so much, Maharaj.
All right. Here's this example which is coming from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He's talking about the government business of a king like Maharaj Ambarish is carried out by his ministers. Because Maharaj Ambarish is a great devotee, he doesn't want to be bothered with all the official things which are required there in being a king. He just wants to be in the temple and chanting and hearing the message of the scriptures. So he doesn't actually have any interest in the government. So the king is uninvolved. Mentioned here, well, the uninvolved king merely remains present. Excuse me. So the king is present, but he's uninvolved with the affairs of the government. All the same, unless the king is present on his throne, the ministers are incapable of doing anything. In the same way, unless Krishna gives his support as the supervisor, material nature cannot do anything. So how does Krishna give his support? Just simply sanctions by his will, just simply by his glance. Krishna will say, now create, and Brahma will create. And Krishna will say, now destroy, and Shiva will destroy. So Krishna just simply gives his word, or he just simply glances over, just glance, do it, get it done. Prabhupada would just say like that, do it, do it. And devotees would run off and do whatever Prabhupada told them to do. So here, Krishna is giving his support to his supervisors. And without that support, the material nature cannot do anything. Okay, Krishna expands here. What's this?
Maharajji, can I ask a question on the earlier slide?
Yes, please do.
So, the question is that it is mentioned that the king was uninvolved, right? And he was merely present. Now, being a king, it's not completing the prescribed duties, right? Because an uninvolved king is not supposed to be a good leader, right? For the people. How would you explain this versus the other places where Krishna says that do your prescribed duties? Now, he's doing, King Amrisha is actually relying heavily on his ministers who are very good, very able and reliant. But please explain how it's justified.
Yes, it's justified because he's engaging in devotional service. He's engaging in pure devotional service to Lord Krishna, which is transcendental. Service to Krishna is not of the material world. So Maharaj Ambarish, you may say, he's neglecting his prescribed duty, but he's taking up the higher spiritual duty. He gave up the material duty to take up the spiritual duty. So one who does that, there's no question of fault on his part. Even though he may not be successful, there's no fault, there's no wrong on his part. Because he's taking up the higher duty, the duty of giving service to the Lord. So Maharaj Ambarish, as the detached, uninterested king, he's not interested so much in the material affairs, but at the same time, he is not neglecting. He's not neglected because he's present on the throne. He does go there. Then he's arranged others to do all the work. He's got other people doing it. Everything, running the government, the ministers and so on. Just like the devotee Alfred Ford, Henry Ford's grandson, Ambarish. So he doesn't go to work. And it happened that they were driving Prabhupada in the city of Detroit, and they happened to go past the Ford offices. So they saw this was Ford Motor Company offices. So one devotee said to Ambarish, "Oh, is this where you work?" And Prabhupada heard, and Prabhupada looked up and said, "He does not work there, he is the proprietor. He is the proprietor. He doesn't go to work." So, in a similar manner, Lord Krishna, or Maharaj Ambarish as a king, he doesn't have to be concerned with the nitty-gritty of the material world, running the affairs of the state. He's got all these ministers there who are maybe better than he is at doing that. And he's just simply the figurehead. He's the one who sits on the throne, and the people are happy to see him. And his citizens are happy to see that he's a devotee. he sets the highest example for them by his devotion, by being there always in the temple and by hearing the scriptures. Because he's so surrendered to Lord Krishna, the people love him more than anybody else. So this is the nature of Maharaj Ambarish's service. He was loved. That was why Durvasa Muni was so envious of him. That everybody they loved Maharaj Ambarish more than they loved Durvasa Muni. Because Durvasa Muni was the big guru and the big yogi, and he had the big temper, and he'd get angry and stuff, you know, he had quite an ego. But Maharaj Ambarish is a gentle, humble, meek Vaishnava, who's always chanting the holy name and serving the deity and bowing to the deities. And he's arranging for festivals as well. He's using his treasury for the service of the deity. And so the people in the kingdom were happy to see how Maharaj Ambarish was. They wanted a king like that. And there's a great need for these kind of kings. If you've got leaders who are just concerned for their own material welfare, then it's not good. If they're only thinking to get rich and to live comfortably, that's not good. It's not the right example. But Maharaj Ambarish is showing the highest example, the best example, to be a devotee and to surrender fully with body, mind and words in the service of Krishna. So
okay.
Maharaj, can we take the example of Prithu Maharaj also here?
Yes, Prithu Maharaj also, of course, there was an emergency situation there in the beginning. That Prithu Maharaj, he was created in order to deal with that emergency. You know, after Venu had been cursed by the Brahmanas, then the Brahmanas churned the body of Venu to produce Prithu Maharaj. So Prithu Maharaj had to arrange for the earth to provide grains and to yield, because the earth was withholding. The Mother Earth had not been pleased. She had not been properly worshipped and properly satisfied with sacrifices. So she stopped yielding grains. And then when there are no grains, then there's no food for the people to eat. So Maharaj Prithu, he had to arrange for the earth that she would again yield grains and produce grains so all the people could be fed. So that was a very emergent. Maharaj Ambarish, he didn't have that kind of situation to deal with. But Prithu did, and he dealt with it. He arranged that Mother Earth would again provide grains. He satisfied her.
Okay, thank you, Maharaj.
All right, so these verses 4 to 10, they're all describing Krishna's inconceivable relationship with the material world. All right? Text 4. Let's look at text number 4. Misconception that the Lord loses his existence. And the analogy of a king and his government. Right? Prabhupada gives the analogy of the king and the government. So the king's there and he has his government. He doesn't lose his existence. Some people, the impersonalists, Mayavadis, they think that after liberation we lose our individual existence. We simply merge into the oneness. But rather to counter that example, we give the example, just like a king has his government. We keep our individuality, we maintain that individuality eternally. But you can see how these different verses, how they could be a problem, because the impersonalists come along and the The Bhagavad Gita is very prone to impersonal interpretation. So you get this kind of, particularly this section of the Bhagavad Gita, this oneness and different. Because Krishna is saying, text number 4, by me in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. So very easy for impersonalists to take up this verse and to give it an impersonal presentation. Because it's all talking about the unmanifested and everything, the universe is pervaded. So it's like oneness. So the example is very important, that we have to hear how to explain these things in the pure devotional way, not simply as impersonal, all-pervading, but in the sense of being a person. The Avyakta Murtina, we cannot see him. Everything is resting in him, but we cannot see him. We mentioned that in chapter 7, remember? Remember that verse? Chapter 7 spoke about he's everywhere, but we cannot see him. Yes? Who knows the verse? Harini? Rukmini? You remember that verse? Chapter 7, text number... Is it text number 8? Mata parataram nanyat. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, Maharaj. It's
Mata
the text number 8.
Mata parataram nanyat kinchit asti dhananjaya mai sarvam idam proktam sutre manigana iva.
Yes, right. So Prabhupada gives an example. He said, just like the sunshine is spread all over the universe, so the energy of Krishna is spread all over the creation, and everything is resting in that energy. But, see, the impersonalists, they will say, yes, Krishna is everywhere, the energy is everywhere. It means he's not a person. There's no God, there's no personal supreme being. But Prabhupada said, no, it's not like that. And Krishna himself says, Krishna said, I am everywhere, everything is in me, but still I am aloof. And Prabhupada gives this example of the king with the government. So the government's like the king's energy, and the king, he's Krishna himself. The king has his government, he has so many departments and everything. King cannot be in every department. But he has responsible people there to take care of everything. So all the manifestations that we see, everything that exists both in the material and spiritual world rests in the energy of the Supreme Lord. The creation takes place by his different energies. Vishtabhyaham idam Krishnam. He's present everywhere by his representation. And that representation is his different energies. Alright, so that's a difficult verse, number 4. And then number 5 is the continuation. Number 5, we get another example. Well, number 5, Krishna speaking again about his mystic opulence. Mystic opulence, this yogam aishwaryam. Krishna describes, gives an example about Atlas laboring to lift the planet. You know Atlas in the Greek myths? You know Atlas is a big, strong man. He's got this huge, big, muscular body, and he's lifting the earth, but it's really heavy for him to lift it. If you go to New York, and if you happen to be in Times Square, on Fifth Avenue, at Rockefeller Center on Fifth Avenue, they have an Atlas there. There's a big bronze statue of Atlas, and he's picking up the earth. So Prabhupada definitely must have seen this bronze statue of Atlas picking up the earth, and Prabhupada incorporated this scene into the purport of text number 5. And he talks about Atlas, how he's struggling to pick up the planet. So is Krishna also struggling to pick up the planets, to hold the universe?
Not at all.
No, not at all. Yeah.
You know, one time the devotees were painting and they drew Krishna with big muscles, you know, big muscular arms, big biceps. And Prabhupada said, oh no, this is not Krishna. Krishna's not like that. The devotee, but Prabhupada, he picked up the Govardhan hill, he must be really strong. Prabhupada said, no, Krishna doesn't need these muscles. He doesn't need that. Krishna can do everything without big muscles or anything. He does it just simply by his spiritual potency. All right? And then text number 6, Krishna gives an example of how the wind rests in space. The mighty wind blowing everywhere always rests in space. In the same way, everything rests in Krishna. There's nothing separate from Krishna, aloof from Krishna. And then text number 9, you have the example of the judge punishing, rewarding. So the judge is neutral, Krishna is neutral. It's not that he favors someone and hates another, but everyone gets the due results of their work. And then text number 10, the fragrance, the smelling power of the person. But the smelling and the flower are detached from one another. So nice examples are given here in this section to help us understand. So question, considering his yogam aishwaram, why doesn't everyone respect Krishna, the Supreme Person? Yes? Why doesn't everyone respect Krishna as the Supreme Person when he has this yogam aishwaram? Anyone?
That's ignorant people would not know. People are ignorant, Maharajji, or they are not aware that he's the Supreme Person.
Yes.
They're not aware, or they don't know.
Also, Maharaj, they don't accept him as Supreme Personality of Godhead. All they think is that he is some mystic yogi or some very,
Yes.
I cannot put right word here, but they mostly consider him that he's somebody who is magnanimous, but not on the platform of Bhagwan.
Oh, okay.
Maharaj, one more thing, just in 12th shloka it is mentioned, like they are bewildered by and attracted by the demonic and atheistic views. In their deluded condition, their hopes for liberation, fruitful activities and culture of knowledge are all defeated. That's why they can't.
Okay, you're reading ahead.
And Maharaj?
Yes?
And Maharaj, their knowledge is covered by Maya.
Knowledge covered by Maya? Uh-huh.
Maharaj, they are in a
they are envious of Krishna also. Like they are not able to accept that someone is supreme from them. So they are envious of Krishna.
Yes, definitely envious of Krishna. We're all envious of Krishna. And that's a big problem in the material world. So we have to learn.
Because of avidya.
Sorry? What?
Avidya, Maharaj, avidya.
Avidya, ignorance, yes, right, ignorance. So ignorant people deride Krishna. Yes, you're right. People are ignorant, so they deride Krishna. They don't understand who Krishna actually is. Here you can see, fools neglect bhakti. the divine don't. Abhijananti mam mudha. Right? The foolish mock at me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. So ignorance, the mudhas, they're foolish. And they're thinking Krishna comes as Manusha in the human form, and they cannot understand that he is actually transcendental. So this points from verses 11 and 12. Those explain the cause of people deriding the Lord. Of course, we've got the grammar wrong here. It should be that. List points from verses 11 and 12 that explain the cause of people deriding the Lord. You've mentioned some of them, actually. I think you did mention quite a few of them there, right? What were some of the things you were mentioning? Ignorance, you were saying, right?
Yeah, lack of awareness, and then people are envious of his supremacy.
Yes.
Poor fund of knowledge. I can see in the purport that like people might be big scholars, but they are still not. They still don't have the complete knowledge. Like they're trying to find the source of everything, but they still don't know where to find it.
Okay. Yes, they're trying.
Because they're bewildered by the material energy, and that's why they can't see things as they are.
Yes, bewildered by the material energy.
Maharaj, it's also written that yet there are many foolish men who consider Krishna to be merely a powerful man and nothing more.
Yes, right.
So foolish people.
Foolish people, they just see Krishna as an ordinary, some person, maybe great man in history or something like that. Mudha. To accept God as man and to accept man as God. This is rascaldom. It's like they say, you know, what is religion is known as irreligion, and what is irreligion we know as religion. So here Prabhupada's making it God, to accept God as man, and man as God, then this is rascaldom. And then the results of that, the results of not recognizing Krishna and thinking Krishna an ordinary man, so that is described in text number 12. Fools neglect bhakti, the divine don't. So text number 12, someone can read?
Karmano, Moha Chetasa, Lakshashima Surim Chaiva, Prakritim Mohinim Srita. Those who are thus bewildered are attracted by demonic and atheistic views. In that deluded condition, their hopes for liberation, their fruitive activities, and their culture of knowledge are all defeated.
All right, you can see whatever they try to do, because they've taken this demonic and atheistic view. So if they are trying for some good result, fruitive result, they want to enjoy karma, they won't get it. If they want mukti, they won't get it either. Whatever they try and do, just to get even gyan, they won't be successful, because they've made great offense in the beginning. They derided the form of the Lord. So because they didn't please Krishna, so they can never be successful in whatever they do. The devotee's business is to give pleasure to Krishna. But the demon, they just simply think of their own sense gratification. Okay, what is the destination of those who deride Krishna in the human form?
Vishwanath.
They go to hell, Maharaj.
Yes, what's that, Prabhu?
They go to hell.
They go to hell. They're already in hell.
Like Maharaj Duryodhan, we can take the example of Duryodhana.
Okay,
But
well,
Maharaj, Duryodhan went to Swarga.
did he? Yeah? Duryodhana went to Swarg? Well, yeah, he died, and the way he was killed, probably he would get a good destination next life. Yeah. All right, so Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur raises this question: what is the destination of those who deride Krishna? So first of all, if they are devotees, they do not achieve salokya or whatever else they have desired. If they are devotees, would they deride Krishna in the human form? Well, if they do not get liberation. If they are karmis, they do not obtain swarg, they don't even go to heaven. And if they are jnanis, they do not attain liberation. So in other words, that was the verse, whatever you try to do, you won't be successful. Mogasya moga karmano, moga jnana vichetas. Right? All their endeavors, whatever they try to do, they won't be successful. The karmis won't get to heaven, the jnanis won't get liberation, and the devotees even won't get back to Godhead. All right? Someone read?
Mogha, mogha, karmano, mogha, jnana. In other words, if one is practicing Ashtanga Yoga liberation, or if one is practicing Karma Kanda rituals for material well-being, or if one is practicing Jnana Yoga for knowledge and Brahman realization, all his aspirations will be crushed if he misunderstands Krishna's form to be material. No success is awarded to those refusing to accept Krishna's transcendental form.
All right. So, it's a warning to all of us. Anybody who doesn't accept Krishna's transcendental form. That's why we give so much importance, you can see in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in presenting the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a lot of descriptions of the different activities of Lord Krishna. We want to understand his transcendental nature, how his form is not of this world. But at the same time, he appears in the human form. But his form is always transcendental. And we have to understand this very carefully. It's very easy to be bewildered. All right. And then going ahead, text number 13, we hear about Mahatmas. How do the devotees actually worship Krishna? Someone chant?
Mahatmanastu Mampatha. Sorry.
Go ahead, Mataji.
Mahatmanastu Mampatha Devim Prakrtimashritah Bhajanti Ananya Manso Gyatva Bhutadim Avyayam. O son of Pritha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. Hare Krishna.
Yes, right. So we heard about the impersonalists, the people who think Krishna is an ordinary person, and they get what happens to them. Now we're hearing about those who actually understand Krishna and they worship Krishna. So they're described as Mahatmas. Now we should understand there's different kinds of Mahatmas. I was listening to Srila Prabhupada's lectures. just the other morning, and Prabhupada was speaking. He said there's two kinds of Mahatmas. One kind of Mahatma are the renounced people, like sannyasis and brahmacharis, and so they can be Mahatmas. They're renounced, no material concerns. But there's another kind of Mahatma also, who are grihastas, who live in the material world, but they're detached from it. They're not just simply thinking of money, in other words. You know, materialistic life, the grihamedis, they're only thinking about the wealth and the economic situation. But there are Mahatmas who are also in family life, and they're simply fulfilling their duty, their obligation, according to the arrangement of Krishna. They're not anxious for wealth, and they accept whatever wealth comes by the grace of Krishna, and they're happy to maintain their life in whatever standard Krishna allows. So they're also Mahatmas. And you can see Lord Krishna takes care of them. They're under the protection of the divine nature. Daivim prakritim ashritaha. The Daivi prakriti is sheltering them. And what are the activities of the Mahatmas? They're fully engaged in devotional service. Ananya manaso, bhajanti ananya manaso, without deviation of the mind. Gyatva bhutadim avyayam, original and inexhaustible. And there's another verse also about Mahatmas. We'll go on. Who is a Mahatma? From Prabhupada's purport. Yes, someone read?
The first sign of Mahatma is that he is already situated in the divine nature. He is not under the control of material nature. The Mahatma doesn't divert his attention to anything outside Krishna, and they are simply attracted by the two-armed form of Krishna. Bhagavad Gita 9.13 pp.
Okay. So who is a Mahatma? Someone who's not under the control of the material nature. The material nature controls us. We become mad after money. We become mad for sense gratification. We have to be careful not to be controlled by the material nature. How to overcome the material nature? Yes, who can say? How do you overcome the material nature?
Maharaj, by surrendering ourselves to the Krishna.
Yes, right. Good. We have to take shelter of Lord Krishna.
Maharaj,
Yes, Maharaji?
Simply by getting attracted by two arms form of Krishna.
Simply what?
Simply by getting attracted by two forms.
Oh, okay.
Two-armed form Krishna.
Are you attracted to the two-armed form of Krishna? Or do you prefer the four-armed form?
No, my two little attracted.
Okay, so Prabhupada is revealing his inner consciousness, that he's encouraging us to be attracted to the two-armed form of Krishna. Later in the 11th chapter, we'll see Arjuna also. He saw the universal form, and then he asked Krishna to show him the four-armed form. But then after he saw the four-armed form, he asked Krishna to show him the two-armed form. So Arjuna was attracted to the two-armed form of Krishna. And we should also follow the example of Arjuna. Yes, someone read?
One who thinks that everything belongs to God, and I also belong to God. Therefore, the Supreme Proprietor is God, and everything should be engaged in His service, has the qualification of Mahatma. Mahatma is not a position or political leader. Don't think that you can become Mahatma by votes and then you become God. This practice is not accepted in the Bhagavad Gita. Lecture Bhagavad Gita 9.11 to 14, New York 66.
Okay. So Prabhupada lecturing on these verses, pointing out, everything should be engaged in the service. But Mahatma is not a political leader. And Prabhupada doesn't approve that you can become a Mahatma by votes. So how do you become a Mahatma? Who can say?
By working for Krishna.
Vote for Krishna.
Right.
Yes, Manaji?
I'm buying everything, everything in the way of Krishna.
Yes, right, that's right. Everything should be engaged in the service of Krishna. Understand everything belongs to Krishna. And I also belong to Krishna. I am also meant for the service of Krishna. That's the position. That is Mahatma.
Maharaj, may I ask a question?
Yes, okay.
Can we call a person Mahatma if he or she is doing something selflessly for the society also?
What do you mean selflessly for the society?
In our India, Maharaj, you must have heard about Mahatma Gandhi.
Oh.
So, he was Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, but he was called Mahatma Gandhi. So, he was not a Krishna devotee exactly, but he did a lot for the society at large during the Indian freedom struggle. So, why he was called Mahatma then? Like you are saying that not a political leader can be called Mahatma. So, can you please throw some light on this?
Yes, well, Prabhupada actually said that about Mahatma Gandhi. He said among politicians, he was a great devotee. He was a Mahatma, but among Mahatmas, he was a politician. In other words, Mahatma Gandhi was not fully focused on self-realization and on the service of Krishna. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, Maharaj, yes, of course.
Okay, all right. So
actually, Mahatma was the name, Mahatma was exactly the title which was given to him by the general public.
Yes, but the general public are not trained, they're not so well educated to know what is really a Mahatma. This is the problem.
Yes.
As Prabhupada said, you don't become a Mahatma by votes. You know, you may get a lot of votes of the common people, but the common people are not in knowledge of who is actually a Mahatma. That's the problem.
Okay, Maharaj, clear.
And Prabhupada himself, as a young man, he was a follower of Mahatma Gandhi. And when he met Bhakti Saraswati in the very beginning, at that time Prabhupada said, he was dressed in white khadi. And Prabhupada didn't accept his graduation from the college because he was protesting against the political situation at that time. He didn't want to take the degree. So Prabhupada, he liked Mahatma Gandhi. He liked the ideas. Some of the ideas were very good, certainly. But there were faults also. Now Prabhupada actually told Mahatma Gandhi, he said, now you've got independence for India. He said, why don't you preach the message of Bhagavad Gita? And Prabhupada had written to him just a few weeks before his end.
Before he was shot.
Huh?
Yes,
before he was shot. So Prabhupada wrote to him and Prabhupada implored him that he said, you're always carrying your Bhagavad Gita. He said, why don't you just preach Bhagavad Gita now? I said, now you've got your independence, you've got what you wanted, now preach Bhagavad Gita. But Mahatma Gandhi couldn't do it. And he was so unhappy the day he was shot, the same day which he was shot, he said that I'm so unhappy I could die. You know, he was really unhappy because everywhere he went, people would say, Mahatma Gandhi ki jai. And the poor man could not even get rest because the whole night people would be chanting Mahatma Gandhi ki jai. And he couldn't even get proper rest in the night. So Mahatma is not a position or political leader, it's a spiritual position. And we have to understand what is actually a real Mahatma as described here in the Bhagavad Gita. So Mahatma is not just some person who does good for the material world, in the material world, but he has to be on the spiritual platform. He has to recognize the proprietorship of the Lord. But there were some nice things, like, you know, the idea of Gandhi's movement, you know, especially the villages, you know, that was very good. You know, the importance of the village industries, that was very nice. And making cloth and so on, and rather than using this all garbage cloth which comes from the synthetic materials. So there was a lot of good things in Gandhi's movement. And some of it Prabhupada also took, you know, that roti kapre makan, right? Roti kapre makan. That in the colonies where people who had taken shelter of Mahatma Gandhi, they were given roti kapre makan. So Krishna consciousness is like that. You take shelter of the Krishna consciousness movement also. You get roti and kapre and makan. We get bread or chapati, and we get cloth to cover the body, and you get a roof over your head also. You don't need any more if you have these things. The basic needs of life are solved. The problem. So you can cultivate, with the balanced time, we can cultivate Krishna consciousness, and we can also work, do some work on the land and produce food, which is so important. All these factories, we need to work on the land, and grow food, and take care of the cows. Okay, here's the next text. Another verse about Mahatmas, describing the activities of the Mahatmas. What are they doing? Someone chant.
Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dridvrataha namasyanta yascha mam bhaktaya nitya yukta upasate. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion.
Okay, so not very difficult activities, but always chanting and endeavoring with determination. There's the word dridavrat. Remember we had this word dridavrat in chapter 7, 28?
No.
So here's dridavrat again. Endeavoring with determination, and then bowing down, offering obeisances. These souls, they perpetually worship me with devotion. So this is real Mahatma. They're always worshipping Krishna, always chanting. They're really Mahatmas. What are the activities of such great souls? Someone can read for us here?
Satatam kirtayam soma, always engaged in chanting the glories of the Supreme Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead. He has no other business. Yatantas, fully endeavoring, mental, bodily and vocal. Everything in the service of the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna. Vrida Brata, strictly observe rules and regulations, vows like Ekadashi. Namasantas, boast of Nitya Yukta Upasate, perpetually worship with devotion. Any ashrama
Yes. Can be in any ashram, can be a grihastha. Doesn't have to be a sannyasi or a brahmachari. It can be a grihastha also, and it can be Mahatma. Right? So these are the qualities, the activities of the Mahatma. Discuss qualities and behavior of a Mahatma, giving examples from Prabhupada's life. Anyone can think of some examples?
Yes, Maharaj. Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, when Srila Prabhupada was when he was having his factory, so and same time he was helping devotees, his god brothers of disciples of Srila Bhakti, his divine grace, Srila Bhakti Saraswati Maharaj disciples also to build a temple. So he used to give charity at that time also. So he was ready to give, and like one example.
Maharaj, Prabhupada was equipoised in both distress and happiness. Like Rupani Mataji was saying that when his factory was destroyed, so at that situation, in that situation also he was equipoised, and he was thanking God for taking away everything from him.
Okay.
And in New York, again, when he just started, this moment, in fact, just the beginning of the moment, he was serving the devotees or people who were just started coming to his kirtanas with preparing food, and then he was cleaning the flat where he was living in. So he was actually doing all the services he could only for Krishna, so that he could establish this moment there. So it was a great Mahatmic qualities that were portrayed, I think.
Yes.
Maharaj, moreover, we can say Prabhupada was a tolerant devotee. He had a great perseverance and tolerance power. He did so much for the hippies.
Yes. Only for the hippies? You think he only worked for the hippies? No.
Not exactly hippies, but in the very beginning of the movement, Krishna consciousness movement, we know that he had tolerated so much from the hippies to make them real happy people.
Most of those people, they were some were university lecturers. Haigriva Prabhu was lecturing in the university, and others were university graduates. You know, they were all well-educated people. Satsvarupa, you know, he was. They were all Kirtanananda, people like that. They were all well-educated.
Yes, Maharaj.
Maharaj, one more thing I just want to tell Maharaj, like endeavoring with great determination, we can find like Prabhupada got the instruction from his spiritual master in 1920s, around 1920-22, and he kept that instruction in mind and worked upon it for almost 40 years. And then at 1965, he went to West. So he was endeavoring with great determination. His determination was not shaken, okay, I will not do it or something like that. He was totally fixed up on his goal, and with determination he went on doing one after another. He went on writing books, building the League of Devotees and so on. So that's one thing I did.
Yes, good. Yeah. He needed a lot of determination, really. He tried to establish the movement in India, and it wasn't successful. But he didn't give up. He went off to America to try to do it there. You could imagine, he tried to do it first in Jhansi, right? In Jhansi he wanted to get a place, and he couldn't do it there in Jhansi. He gave up in Jhansi, he went to New York. Could you imagine? You can't do it in Jhansi, go to New York to do it. There's so much determination. And then Satatam Kirtayantumam, always chanting, waking up every night to write his books.
Yes, Maharaj, in this point, Srila Prabhupada said that I never forget Krishna. Since he came into this material world, he never forgot. When he was a child, he used to worship. He was having deities. He was having his deities at the age of 5. He was running Rath Yatras. So he was always Satatam Kirtayanto Mam. And he was, fully endeavoring. Yes, he endeavored and Dridvata. He was so he was Dridvata that he got the instruction from his spiritual master, from his divine guest Bhakti Sastri Maharaj in the first meeting, and he took that into his heart, and whole life he tried a lot. He faced so many difficulties. He wrote Bhagavad Gita commentaries. It was stolen. Her wife sold out that. He faced so much, but he was still so much Dridvata that he again wrote all these things.
Thank you, Mataji. Yes. I was also thinking how before he went to America, people told him, I think it was somebody from other mission had said, you should use a knife and fork. You have to learn how to use a knife and fork, because everyone eats with a knife and fork in the West. But Prabhupada said, I'm not going to learn from them. I'm going to teach them. So Prabhupada never compromised. He was very determined. He never thought, that, maybe I have to do these things like them. He kept his determination. All right?
Yeah, Maharaji, one thing that I have read that Prabhupada ji hardly slept, right? Because he would get up early morning and he would start writing or translating Bhagavatam.
Yes.
But he prescribes 6 hours sleep for other devotees, and he hardly slept. I mean, maybe an hour or 2 hours, or maybe not.
Couple of hours he would sleep.
So he was very determined because he was on a mission, I feel that.
Oh, yeah.
So how can we adapt to that lifestyle? Because if we don't sleep properly, then we always listen from our family that, you should sleep more and you should get more rest. And I feel that it's like we can also be on a mission, right? Where we would like to do something which is not like Prabhupada ji. He was obviously different. But I just wanted to get your views on this.
Well, you have to go step by step. You have to understand that Prabhupada had been in this his whole life. It wasn't something new to him. But Prabhupada's whole life had been in Krishna consciousness. He was born in a Vaishnava family, and gradually, taking up the Krishna consciousness movement, he saw the need to restrict his sleeping, to minimize his sleeping so that he could do more work in the way of writing, because his involvement with the society took a lot of the day. So he found it better to do his writing in the night.
Nice.
And in order to do that, he would wake up in the night. And he would sometimes take a rest in the afternoon, He would sometimes after lunch may take a rest, but not for long. He was very, very strict and regulated about how much he wouldn't sleep much. And he never had jet lag, although he traveled so much. Other devotees would be so tired and so exhausted, young men, but Prabhupada would be up and he would be on, and he would be chastising them. Why are you sleeping? Don't sleep. And yet he was really superhuman.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, he was empowered. Krishna Shakti, you have to have that Krishna empowerment from Krishna to do these things, right? In order to spread the holy name, you have to be empowered by the mercy of Krishna. Krishna Shakti. Krishna Shakti vininahi tara pravartan. Because Prabhupada was spreading the holy name, so Krishna empowered him. Okay, we'll just finish off here. One does not need to undergo any severe penance and austerity. He can live this life in devotional service, guided by an expert spiritual master, and in any position, either as a householder, or a sannyasi, or a brahmachari, in any position and anywhere in the world, he can perform this devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus become actually Mahatma, a great soul. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Are there any questions? Yes? Tonight, do we have any questions, anyone? Okay, so we'll be back tomorrow night.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Srila
Thank you so
Prabhupada.
much.
I have one question, Maharaj.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.